So true.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, July 21st, and I am delighted to welcome back to the show Santa Barbara City Council member Meagan Harmon, also a member of the Coastal Commission. We're going to get into that right away, too. And joining in the questioning, my colleague, as ever, Josh Molina, man of mystery and many platforms. Hey, Meagan, it's, as you know, there's always a lot of competition in Sacramento for biggest twit in the state capital. But I'm pretty sure that this guy, State Senator Anthony Weiner from my hometown of San Francisco, has retired the honor. Now he's got a bill, the Senate Bill 423, as I understand it, where he's not only going to pave over the entire state in the manner of his native New Jersey, which is where he's from, I may
Something
point,
to aspire toward.
but also on the California coast. He wants to take some of the powers away from the California Coastal Commission so he can throw up a bunch of cheap condos and apartments on the Gaviota coast. What are you, as a coastal commissioner, doing about this, and give us a little more background about it?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for having me. Super excited to be back with you guys, and baby Jack's not here today, so
Yeah,
we'll have
too
a nice,
bad.
quiet
Too bad.
conversation. Yeah, this is a huge issue for the Coastal Commission, and I'll say that I personally oppose this bill, and the commission as a whole has voted. We actually voted unanimously to oppose this bill unless amended. So it's a complicated conversation because as a commission, I would say probably more than at any time since I've joined, we are a very pro-housing commission. We certainly understand the need for housing, particularly affordable housing in the coastal zone. But we were mandated by the voters. The Coastal Commission was put in place by the voters into the California Constitution. It's not something, in my opinion, that we can or should railroad in this way. And I think what this bill would do, just by way of explanation, right, is allow for housing by right in the state, including in the coastal zone. So a lot of these laws that we've seen come through that allow by right development exclude the coastal zone, particularly because of our mandate from the voters and the way that the California Constitution operates. This would not do that. And so for us as a commission, it was really important to us that we maintain that authority. I mean, I think one of our legislative directors was quoted, and I totally agree with her when she says that if this bill goes through, if this allowance for any kind of development in the coastal zone is allowed to proceed, it essentially denudes the commission of a huge amount of authority, and it's just a matter of time until that authority is further and further eroded. It's a real risk. And I would also just add that I am aware of the complexities around the Coastal Commission and trying to do development in the coastal zone. I too want affordable housing in the coastal zone. We have not once, since I joined the commission, denied an affordable housing project. So we are not anti-housing on the commission. I am not anti-housing in the coastal zone either, but it's got to be done in a way that protects that resource that's so precious to all of us, that thing that makes California, California. And that's our precious coastline. That's what the voters tasked the commission with doing. And we're fighting hard to do that. So we've got folks in Sacramento showing up to, we had the natural resources hearing a week or so ago, and that was a tough hearing with lots of back and forth and really just lobbying hard to try to get amendments into that bill that will protect and preserve the authority of the commission to do the same protecting and preserving of our coastline.
Yeah, well, I know that your career in public service is always dedicated to more work for lawyers, but it seems to me that, doesn't this just set up a bunch of lawsuits? I mean, it is in the Constitution. what Weiner is proposing is not going to be in the Constitution. So explain to me how that works.
Yeah, I think that's the direction that it would go. I mean, me personally, and I think I can speak for the commission, we said this when we had the hearing a few months ago, our sincere hope is that it does not get to that point. Because we actually all have hopefully the same goal, which is preservation of our coast and development of truly affordable housing for folks to be able to live and recreate in that coast. So let's try to make the bill work before we begin thinking about, all right, what's going to happen next. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there'll be lawsuits and who knows, I'll be off counsel then. So maybe I'll be the lawyer to do it. But
well, you know,
hopefully we won't.
I'm old enough to remember a project up north on the Mendocino coast called Sea Ranch, and that was one of the things that why we got the California Coastal Act, because people were about to try to turn the 800-mile coast into Miami Beach, which, you know, again, he's from New Jersey, okay, so we can understand this. But you quoted one of your lobbyists. That's Ms. Gilbert, is it not?
I was talking about something that Sarah Christie said, who's our legislative director.
Yeah, she says, once you start exempting classes of development from the Coastal Act, there will be no shutting that barn door. Not to mix a metaphor. You're going to lose some of the best things about California. I mean, you know, we're talking about tourism, we're talking about fish, not to mention the effects of climate change on the coast. So if I understand what you're saying is the Coastal Commission is not anti-housing. However, it is pro looking at specific projects one by one individually if they fall within that 1,000-foot zone, rather than, hey, you know, you've got the right to the land, you can do whatever you want with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I have really found in quite stark contrast to what I understood about the commission before joining it, is that well, let me just say first, it's a wildly complicated process. I absolutely understand that, and I understand the frustration, but we are not anti-development. I am not anti-development in any way, but it's got to be the right project in the right place, serving the right people for the communities that we are investing in. And I think that is what the voters have asked of the commission, and that's really what we try to do. Housing, always, we look on it, it's, you know, something we like to see. Now, we don't always approve every housing project ever, right? Because we know, as we've seen in the city of Santa Barbara, not all housing is created equal. But we are more inclined toward housing than a lot of other things, and we're absolutely in favor of affordable housing in the coast. That's the kind of housing that's necessary. And I would just add a sort of an interesting wrinkle here. The commission has advocated quite strongly with the legislature to return to us the authority to prioritize affordable housing uses as
which they took out. They took
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because they don't, you know, I get it. I think there were past commissions maybe that were not utilizing that power in a way that best served coastal Californians. I guess that's what I'm told. I don't know if I quite agree with that, but look, if we had that authority to say that affordable housing is among the things that the commission must consider when we determine whether a project should move forward or not, that gives us the statutory authority to say yes. In fact, we would be required to say yes to affordable housing. So it's kind of a difficult circle for me to square, when on the one hand, I'm hearing about these rules that would totally take away, these proposed rules that would take away all of our authority in the commission. On the other hand, we're saying, hey, instead of undermining the Coastal Act, why don't you give us back that very thing that would allow us to effectuate our shared goals, which is affordable housing in the Coastal Act, and we get a big no to that. So I keep thinking, what am I missing here? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm not sure that affordable housing is really what's driving the conversation around these bills at the core.
Well, my head is exploding on this one, and we could spend the entire show on it, but I want to get to Josh and some of the local housing. Let me just say one more thing about this. The thing that enrages me the most about this guy Weiner, and he's got a great little racket going, because on the one hand, you know, he's the progressive tribune of housing on the other. He's raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from developers getting ready to run for Nancy Pelosi's seat. But that aside, this argument that he makes that if you're somehow against this, you're a racist, you're a white, wealthy racist because you just want to keep people of color out of the coastal zone. What in the world is that argument about?
Yeah, I don't, that just doesn't hold water with me. And that's not reflective at all of the positions that I have seen taken month after month by my colleagues on the Coastal Commission. That is not where we are. We have a strong commitment, in fact, legislative, statutory commitment to environmental justice. And that's something that is at the core of every conversation we have on the commission. It is not ancillary at all. So that argument just doesn't carry water for me. I would add, by the way, as well, just to maybe button this up a little bit, I appreciate the need for housing in the state of California.
As you said.
Right? I mean, I agree. But if you really want to help us build housing, enough with these rules that don't get anything done, how about you bring back the RDA? And we have access to funds that will allow affordable housing developers to actually do the work that we need
now,
them
why don't you ask your pal, Supervisor Das Williams, about that, who supported it? By the way, Monique took a hike on this bill, right? She didn't even get on it. She just walked down the hall because she didn't want to go against the leadership. What did Greg Hart do? Well, I guess it hasn't been.
It hasn't come yet. Yeah, I think it's just, it was in the Natural Resources
Senate. It's coming out of committee in the
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's at the Housing Committee next week, maybe, but I don't expect.
Yeah, it's not going to slow down there. All right, Josh, you've just heard Council Member Harmon try to be subtle and balanced on this housing issue. Obviously, she is not in the city of Santa Barbara, where she's in favor of constructing soulless high-rise canyons and all the way down State Street.
Can you say that I want to make it Manhattan? I think that's
yes, Manhattan. Yes, Manhattan. What do you got, Josh, on what's going local on the house?
Well, if you notice, Jerry, I didn't interrupt once.
I know, and we really went on.
Well, no. Councilwoman Harmon's like the only guest I feel guilty interrupting because, I mean, effectuate. I mean, that was one of the words. Like, anyway,
just hold up a sign.
We're going to get to the paradigm. We're going to get to the paradigm shift in a little bit.
No, but it's just really fun as a journalist to listen to her talk and explain these issues because they are complicated, but she explains them in a way that are really down to earth and make sense. And it's just, I'm going to shut up and let Meagan, talk on this show because I can't say it any better. But I do have one question, Council Member Harmon, is I interviewed Peter Lewis last week on my podcast, and he had some harsh words for the council.
Developer Peter
Lewis. He's building, I think, a 78-unit project downtown behind the Staples building. He's on the State Street Master Plan Committee. Yeah. And he said that city council's policies actually hurt housing downtown. And so when we're talking about where we should be building housing, downtown is one of the places that everybody wants to figure out a way to do this. What he is saying is if you have a commercial building and you want to turn that into housing, that the city of Santa Barbara does not allow enough density for the developer to be able to make that pencil out and be profitable. We have height limits. There's only a certain amount that they can build. And so it's just not feasible. And he really stresses that developers get this negative sort of perception that they're all just out there about money. But when you think about the cost of buying land and building and borrowing and the payoff it takes, a decade down the road, that it isn't as though they're these greedy developers that every sort of unit matters. So I guess I wanted to just sort of ask you, are you open to higher downtown, to increasing density downtown so that we can have housing? Peter goes a step beyond and says, we're never going to be able to build enough affordable housing. It's just too expensive. The housing authority needs to do that. The city needs to do it on lots. But can you just talk about, do we need to allow developers to have more density downtown for this to make sense for them? And should we go higher?
Yeah, thank you. You know, Peter, he's great. He and I don't always see eye to eye on these issues, but I've been really, really grateful for his contribution, both to the conversation, broadly speaking, about housing, but also particularly in the State Street Master Planning Committee. I mean, you know, it's always funny for he and I to go back and forth, and he's a good guy to have around and brings a much needed perspective. On State Street in particular, I am absolutely supportive of increasing densities. Jerry, relax, I said density. That's part of why I supported the FAR concept. I don't know if you remember, I guess this was 2 years ago now, we were talking about making a change to FAR, which is really looking at the building envelope and then figuring out
what does FAR stand for those?
Floor to lot area ratio.
Thank you.
And it's kind of an arcane zoning tool, right? It's definitely not. I remember I tried to get folks excited about this conversation, and it was like people were like, Meagan, you can't make FAR happen. You know, it's not cool.
No, the Mayor Lodge was pretty excited about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's true, but she wasn't on she didn't have my position. So, you know, I'm really supportive of that. I think if what we believe is necessary for a revitalized downtown is more housing in the downtown core, I believe that. I think we've all come to agree that that would be a fantastic use of these empty buildings. Then we've got to figure out a way to make it happen. And if increasing density is a tool that's going to take us from talking about it to actually seeing housing built in some of these buildings, then I'm all for it if it's done in a thoughtful, coherent way. So, you know, I think that is something we should absolutely talk about. And the FAR is a tool that would allow us to get there on a lot by lot basis in a more effective manner. But even so, I mean, I'm open to increasing densities downtown. As to height increases downtown, you know, I'm open to that too. There's definitely a limit though. And I personally have
What's the limit? What's the limit?
I don't know. And I wouldn't be willing to put a number on it right now, but I would
8 stories, 8 stories, double figure stories. How about 12?
Jerry.
90,000, 100,000.
Less than
How many
12?
people? Throw that at her too.
Less than 12.
Oh, here's where I have evolved on this question. And this has been an evolution for me over the years. When I first got on council, I was much more inclined to say, like, let's go way higher. And I think that I've changed a bit on that position. I'm less open to that now than I was in the past, because I don't think that we've made use of all the other tools that we can make use of to facilitate housing. So until we really streamline the process, until we try to figure out a way to increase density in the existing building envelopes, until the city can play a role to really assist these downtown developers, I think that that's an absolute last resort for me. And I don't think we've come close to needing to do that in any meaningful way.
Do you think, sorry,
more or 10, more or less is your limit? 10, more, less than 10, more 10 and above. Which is it's a yes or no?
Floors? Well, it's you said less
yes.
or more, so it's not yes or no, it's less or more.
Okay, it's a binary question. All right, miss.
No, honestly, I'm not trying to be glib here. I don't know. I'm not open to having a conversation about a significant height increase right now. We have not done what we need to do to get us to really, really requiring that conversation. And by the way, I think it's critical that we maintain that thing that makes Santa Barbara so special. So we've got to find, and that's something I've learned being on the Coastal Commission as well, like you have got to find balance. There's something about this state, there's something about this city that is so special. And if we let go of that, what's left? And so that is at the forefront of my mind. But look, density increases, giving on parking, open space requirements. There's so much that we can do that we haven't done yet. I don't think we even need to broach the height conversation. It's just a divisive topic. We're not there yet. No offense.
I know that it's not the council's role to micromanage the planning department, but I think what Peter was saying
Good
and
if
what
somebody
some of the
did.
what some of
I said
what
it
some
would
of
be
the
good if
developers
somebody did.
Wow.
yes what some of the developers have said is, it's so much easier to build a hotel than it is to build housing. So I guess my question is, Councilmember Harmon, if you're open to more density, not necessarily higher,
Yeah.
can you put it on an agenda? Can you do a 2-person memo and say, let's have a conversation? Or do you meet with the community development director privately behind the scenes? And like, I guess that, how do you make it happen more so than just saying, yes, I would support that? How do you get it actually on an agenda for discussion?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, it's funny you asked that, because as you were talking, I was like, maybe this will be my new thing for the next year. Like, I've kind of been looking around for what's next. A couple of ways. Yeah, I mean, a 2-person memo. I personally tend to sort of see the 2-person memo as a last resort. I don't like to do it because it means you probably don't have the support that you need to get the item passed if you have to do a 2-person memo. Now, of course, if it's necessary, I'm all for it, but I like to kind of do that work behind the scenes. So it's something that I'll definitely start to message. I haven't heard much talk about needing increased densities downtown, but it's maybe a synergistic moment as we're talking about State Street and the way that that's going to evolve and how people should use it as its living room. Like, those conversations go hand in hand. If we want to have this revitalized downtown because of the promenade we're creating, that can't happen in a vacuum. So let's think about these ancillary but critical ordinances that need to be drafted or revised in support of that project. This is one of them. So thank you, Josh and Peter, just watch that. We'll see. Maybe I can drum up some support. And what's cool actually is, I don't like spot zoning in general because I think it's not a coherent way to govern. But if we have the promenade as a zone or downtown, like, we might be able to upzone in that specific area. And I mean, there's lots of things that we can do that can work in concert with the plan. So yeah, we'll see.
Hey, Josh, I know you got an important meeting with Chick-fil-A coming up here and you got to leave early, but
it's an opening today?
Yeah, no, what, can we pivot to pivot? You get that? Can we pivot to State Street for a second? Josh, what do you got on that?
I think it's a soft opening. But yes, so let's talk a little bit about State Street and downtown. It's such a divisive issue. And we just had this meeting, right, where the city decided to extend the current conditions through 2026. And there are people who want cars. There are people who don't want the bikes there. There are people who want a downtown trolley. People who don't like the shabby look of some of the parklets. They like downtown or downtown outdoor dining, but on the sidewalks, not the street. All this stuff going on. And then you've got the master plan committee who's saying, we're working long-term future, right? It's going to be great. And so everyone has this opinion, and we had this big vote, and Randy and Eric were on the other side of it.
Well, we should say Randy, Eric, and all right-thinking people everywhere. Go ahead.
I guess if you could just talk a little bit about your position, because I know when Randy was on the show, he made some comments and in terms of some of the quotes that I quoted you saying, in terms of some of the terms you said. What was some of the
paradigm?
Or
we need to change that paradigm. I think. She's got more.
It was a bit much, even for me.
The person who comes close to her on soaring rhetoric is RFK Jr.
No, Jerry, she did not say that. No,
we need to change that paradigm to one that permanently commits to and prioritizes robust communal.
So it's probably not even a direct quote that I probably botched a word or two. I probably added a word or two myself there, so you didn't look at the video. No, but I feel like this whole discussion needs a leader. It needs somebody who can come and pull this all together. How are you going to make sense of all of this with so many people pointing fingers and just so unhappy with a certain part of it? Like, what is your sort of vision for downtown, and how do you fix this?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question. And it's still an open question for me. But where I have had to sort of make sure that I stay focused is in what I'm hearing broadly from the community. So yes, there's really, really strong feelings, but when I go out in my district and talk to people, which I do on a very regular basis, the feedback I get is keep going, keep pushing. This is the direction that we want to proceed.
But
So
that's the people in your district. That's not the people throughout the city.
I mean, look, the survey results, I understand, are not
Pauline,
scientific,
don't start with that survey.
but it was only a matter of time till I brought it up.
Ah.
People like this, and most people do. Are there things that we need to fix? Absolutely. But is the answer to go backwards? I really, really don't think so. And I think that I am still committed to this visionary moment that we have and the possibilities as a community to create something that drives life and energy and economic activity in our downtown for generations to come. But how do we make it happen? And that goes, I think, Josh, to your question, like, how do we get from here to there, to that visionary reality? And I don't know. I mean, we're feeling our way forward together. I believe, as difficult as that conversation was on the 26th, I think that we took a step forward. And I know Randy disagrees with me. We are just on different sides of this. But one of the challenges over the last 2 years, and why I have never supported, for example, aesthetic requirements for the parklets on State Street, is because we have been approving the continuation of the promenade in 6-month increments. And I have never felt that it was a year-long increments, or, and just shorter timeframes. And I've always thought, gosh, how can I ask businesses to invest in a new promenade when they have no commitment from us that this is going to be?
Yeah, but Randy says he's talking to retailers who don't want anything to do with it because you don't have a permanent solution.
Do you remember before, in 2019, when I got on council, and this is what I always remind Randy of, and I think he's sort of remembering this glorified past from 2019. When I came on council, the conversation was so much about how terrible State Street is. That was all we talked about. It was the Cosmont report. I mean,
well, that hasn't changed.
I think it has. There's energy, there's people. I remember in 2019, my daughter and I were walking on State Street and a literal tumbleweed tumbled by on the sidewalk. An actual tumbleweed.
How about this? Why don't you get together with your council colleagues and put it on the ballot? Should we continue to have 9 blocks of State Street closed, of which 2 actually have some restaurant activity?
Objection to the land.
Put it on the ballot. Let's see if most people agree.
I think we'd win that. I'd put it on the ballot.
Well, why don't
how about this? And then I got to go. Councilmember Harmon, don't you want Mara and Jack? I know I want my daughter Meagan to have a holiday parade on State Street again.
Right
Those
on,
were
brother.
so fun.
And the children's
memories, So maybe you can figure out what you're doing and allow the parade as well on State Street. Speaking of children, I got to go pick up my daughter at camp. So thanks a lot. Take care.
All right.
Let me just, is your objection the length? Is it 13?
Yeah, I think Eric had this right.
But that was random.
The concentration of the parklets and the concentration of the foot traffic and all these other things is in basically 2 or 3 blocks. And you could solve a lot of these problems with these knuckleheads on their Nick Welsh electric bikes and all this other.
I know, I need Nick for this conversation.
All this other crap that's going on down there, and the traffic flows very easily by not having, go to Victoria and State, there's nothing happening there. There just isn't.
But is there not something else that we could envision for those blocks? Look, and by the way, I'm not entirely committed to the full.
Oh, you're not. So you're okay.
I'm open to something else. I don't think we should throw a dart at the board and say these 2 blocks are staying open and the rest are closing. I just want to have a real conversation.
That's what your colleague, Ms. Snedden said last week, that she voted for this thing on the understanding that it was an opportunity for experimentation and to try things. Do you agree with that or not?
And that's what they say. I'm hopeful. That's what they say. I mean, look, I think the proof will be in the pudding. If we begin to see experimentation coming out of this committee, that's great. I mean, that's going to give us an opportunity to say, hey, this
The new
works,
the new committee.
the new, well, it's the old committee, but it's just now
Going to
public.
meet in public now.
Yeah,
for a change.
it's Brown acted. But, you know, I think there's also other possibilities rather than just reopening some of those blocks to cart. Maybe that's what we do. But, you know, what about public gathering spaces? You know, what about, there was one rendering I saw, like put a little stage here and we could do, you know, there's different things that can be done. It's not all parklets or nothing. And I guess I just don't think that we've had the opportunity to really have that conversation. We're doing it at the master planning level, but I would hate to kneecap us in that committee by making the decision preemptively. It's kind of where I'm at.
What are you going to do about the fact that the parklets look like the flea market at Earl Warren on Tuesdays?
Oh, well, now that I'm I just knew you were going to say that. I'm open now and will support aesthetic requirements. And part of the reason I haven't in the past is because there was not a commitment from our side to allow them to continue for enough time that business owners could amortize the cost. Now we're committed through 2026. They can amortize the cost of that investment over time. And it is reasonable from a business perspective and a city government perspective for us to require aesthetic improvements. And when those improvement recommendations come out of the committee, assuming they're not, I don't know, I guess you can't say you'll definitely support them. It depends on what they are, but I support those requirements being implemented now.
All right, let me pull the lens out a little bit and go a little macro here. You're familiar with the fact that, as I'm sure you read Cadillac Desert many years ago, that we, in fact, do live in a desert, and that the supply of water to Southern California is a great masterwork of human engineering, but not nature's plan exactly. How many people do you intend to pack in to Santa Barbara above the number of 90,000, even though we have obviously long past reached the limit of our resources? If I can ask that question in a neutral way.
Yeah, as you did. I mean, good work. Well, first of all, I cannot control, I mean, just constitutionally, I cannot control the number of people that come in to live in our city. I can't set up borders around Santa Barbara and say, you can't come, we've reached our capacity. So I don't have the capacity as a lawmaker to do that. I can't set that number. Now we can plan for certain numbers by building housing, allocating resources, that kind of thing. I have not gotten to that question because I don't believe that we are adequately servicing the people who currently live in this city. I'm not even to the question of how big can we grow, because the number of people that are already here are not sufficiently housed and they're not sufficiently cared for. So my focus for the next 3 years is really going to be on how do we take care of the people that are already here. We are not doing that. We don't have enough affordable housing. We don't have enough middle income housing, and people are struggling. And this has been a struggle, as you know, for many, many years. I think that we put the cart before the horse if we think too far into the future and ignore the problem, the crisis really that's currently in front of us.
You agree with me, however, don't you, that that we have in fact maxed out in terms of the limit of our resources for water, as well as infrastructure in terms of waste disposal, parking, and other transportation related
You know, I am really interested in the question of waste disposal. That's not something that I have a lot of expertise in, but have recently been doing some thinking about and heard some rumblings about the challenges around the waste that we're creating as a community, where it goes, how it impacts our contribution to climate change, and what that's going to look like in 15, 20 years. We've got the new resource center, of course, but I don't think that solves the problem. So that's a big question mark for me. On water, in a lot of ways, we're lucky. We have the desal plant, and I understand that desal is controversial, but it allows us to have a diversified water portfolio to support the residents. And one of the things that was really shocking to me at Coastal Commission, I guess it was about a year ago now, we were hearing a desal plant project, not Poseidon, but a different one in Northern California, and there was a couple of smaller communities that came and were testifying before us that they have this issue where they will turn their taps on and nothing comes out. And I just thought, gosh, we all think about the challenges of water and resource allocation, but you turn on your tap and water comes out. For many communities, I mean, many is maybe too strong of a word, but for some communities in California, that number is only going to grow. There's no water when they turn on the tap. How are we going to manage that problem? I don't know. We've got to be very, very pragmatic in the infrastructure projects that we develop and how we manage our portfolio. But the truth is the people are here. And so this idea that if we don't build, nobody's going to be here and it's all going to be okay, and that's not the solution either. We've just got to find some kind of balance between housing development, infrastructure development, and pragmatic planning for our particularly water resources.
No, I mean, I'm serious about this. There is in this, land rush to build housing that's coming out of Sacramento, a fundamental contradiction with the fact that we don't have enough water, that we are living in a 1,000-year drought, and that, we're dealing with climate change. Insurance companies are canceling people's insurance, fire insurance.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? I mean, it makes no sense. At the middle of this argument is a basic intellectual, logical contradiction.
So yes, I see your point, but I think others might say the housing that we're building or that people want to build, again, it goes back to the point about how big is Santa Barbara going to grow. It's not for new residents. It's not to increase use. It's to adequately house the people who are already here. I think that is what the proponents of these bills would say. Like, we are not, with the development of housing, putting up a big sign that says, move here, we've got all you could ever need. We're saying we have a responsibility to the residents that are already in our state, that are already struggling with lack of adequate housing supply. So the strain on our resources is already there. It's just an opportunity or a mechanism, I guess, for trying to make lives more comfortable for the people that are already here. So, I don't know. I think that there's probably truth to that and truth to what you're saying. I mean, these are just sort of the key questions of our time, and really fundamental to the questions that we deal with on the Coastal Commission in particular as well. I mean, it's a difficult time we find ourselves in as Californians, but also one of great opportunity. And that's part of what I love about being a resident of California, working in local government, working for a state agency the way that I do. The challenges are incredible and the contradictions are stark, but the possibilities for folks that are engaged in creative thinking, that really understand the core values of the state of California, the possibilities are amazing. And we're only limited by our vision for the state. So it's a critical moment for us, but one that's really exciting to be a part of.
Well, this is why I am so soothed and put in the calm, centered, and peaceful place that you see me week after week. Yeah. By the views of Dr. Elliot Jacobson, the widely known Santa Barbara doomer, who says,
"Oh yeah,
it is." I mean, this is all just working around the margins. We are living through a human extinction event, council member, and the only thing we can do is to be kind to each other. So let me put you on the spot for a second,
okay?
If I could. It's widely known that other than Taylor Swift, you have the largest fan base west of the Mississippi.
Me and Taylor Swift, it's true.
And they rose up as one a few weeks ago when I when I said that you had only moved here a week ago, when of course everyone knows it was 3 weeks ago. However,
Longest 3 weeks of my life.
clarify that for the record, just for starters. But then a lot of people are asking me and suggesting to me, I say, why doesn't Meagan run for supervisor? What do you say about that?
Well, I moved here almost 7 years ago now, which is amazing. It feels like yesterday. I moved right after my daughter was born. We had been renting a place here, but sort of just coming up, moving our furniture slowly. And my daughter was born, and we literally drove from the hospital in Glendale to our new house in Santa Barbara, which I was a first-time mom because I thought that would not be horrible, and it was. But we did it. So she just turned 6. So I kind of mark my time in Santa Barbara by her years. So that's really nice. And most of her life, she's seen me on council, actually, which is very sweet. And that's kind of all she's.
That's right. I remember the night that you were appointed. She was in the audience with
right. She was 1.5, and I was just
had to haul her out of there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking when I'm finally termed out in 3 years, she's going to be almost 9. So her whole life, she's grown up really with Santa Barbara, which is such a beautiful thing.
Which would be just to get back to the other question, an excellent time.
Do you see how I really tried to go in a different direction?
Excellent way for you to transition into a public service position, which is a real job.
No, you know what? I'm committed to the city of Santa Barbara, and I came on your podcast, and I guess this was 2 years ago now, during the debate, and said, I'm all in for the city. We have so much work that we need to do. State Street, we've got to figure that out. Housing, I love being on the Coastal Commission. So I am all in for the city of Santa Barbara. I even volunteered myself for a term I'm not eligible for on that podcast. That's how much I love being on city council.
Yes,
so I'm here to stay.
But there are no term limits on this board of supervisors, don't you?
I've heard that, yeah, but maybe they should be instituted. I actually love.
They definitely should be instituted.
Right, and I realize this will make me supremely unpopular with my political colleagues across the spectrum, but term limits I think are fabulous, and I love that they exist on city council. First of all, to get new ideas, new perspectives on the council after 8 years, but also I think it really just allows us to focus on what's truly important rather than maintaining our seat. I mean, for me, being in my last term, I just love it. The conversations I'm having are honest and focused on policy, and the political back and forth is just not it's not as important, and it's really about the work that's being done. And I attribute that part of it, it's me getting older and a little grumpier and more tired. I don't have time for the games, but I think term limits has a lot to do with it, and so I'm a strong supporter of term limits across the board.
Yeah, as long as it's managed right. When there was in Sacramento the 2-term limit for the assembly and the 2-term limit for the Senate, that was not good, because as soon as people got there, they started running for the next office, and now at 12 years, that kind of makes, I think that makes more sense.
Well, our terms are also, I mean, I guess I shouldn't paint with so broad a brush, but our terms are 4 years on city council. So the argument that, as soon as you get your bearings, you're out, I mean, that doesn't really apply. 4 years is a long time. 8 years is a super long time. So that's plenty. I think that's plenty for local government. There's a lot of people who are really invested in our city. And I love the fact that 3 years from now, there'll be a new person in my seat, and everyone I meet in the 6th district, I'm kind of like, are you interested? We'll see. So I think it'll be fun. I think it's good for the city and good for our policies to get those new perspectives.
Well, and that would give you 2 more years to get a campaign up and running to beat him the next time. How much money have you got in your campaign fund, by the way?
Very little. I just went wild.
It sounds like your answer to the height question. What is very little?
I actually know. I know, as low as possible. No, I think I've got a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
It's not crazy. we really committed to our campaign to get me reelected, and we spent a lot of money getting that done, which I'm proud of.
Well,
And
you had some tough competition, of course.
yeah, so that was good. And then since then, one of the things that I really love, the use of campaign funds, you know, obviously we're allowed to use them in connection with philanthropic events and, you know, buying a sponsorship to EDC or that kind of thing. And
Giving money to the Democratic Party would probably on that list too, huh?
it is, but I don't, they haven't asked lately. So they better get on that because my funds are running low.
All right. All right, Meagan Harmon, hey, thank you very much for taking the time and being so generous with your time and for putting up with it. Watch it, you know, we appreciate your work on the Coastal Commission. You know, obviously we talk about, your name comes up almost every week when we talk about council affairs, but this is really an important issue, this SB 423, and we appreciate you being in there and trying to balance the issues of housing and coastal protection, because as you said, there is something very special about this place. And so unlike others I could name, we appreciate you trying to keep it the way it is.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. And thank you for all you do, keeping this conversation going. You know, I mean, without you guys, who'd be talking about local government, you know?
Who would be pissed off? Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Well, it was great to be on. Thank you, Jerry.
All right, thank you.